Up here in our last hour of the Washington Journal, we are going to head to Fort A.P. Hill Military Base in Virginia, where C-SPAN's Pedro Echeverria will pick it up from here.
And thank you. And the reason that we are on this military base, and if you were to look at it on a map, it's about an hour and a half south of Washington, D.C. The reason we're here is because it's the site of the Asymmetric Warfare Training Center. It's a 300-acre facility designed to replicate in the most detail possible a small city setting, complete with multi-level buildings, a subway, a train station, and even an underground tunnel. The purpose is to have U.S. troops develop and hone skills needed to fight in urban conflict zones across the world. Here to join us to talk about the center and its mission is Colonel John Petkosek. He is the commander of the U.S. Army Asymmetric Warfare Group. Colonel, thanks for joining us. Welcome to C-SPAN.
Pedro, thank you for having me.
Can you tell us about the buildings behind us, what we're seeing, what the purpose is?
Sure, Pedro. Well, what I'd like to do is just kind of put it into context in terms of why we have the training center here today. Is the Asymmetric Warfare Group provides operational advisory support and solution development for the Army and Joint Force commanders. And really what that means is four things for the service. We provide operational advisors all around the world wherever U.S. forces are deployed. We do that to identify capability gaps. Ultimately, we develop solutions for those gaps and then integrate those back in the Army system. And that's what this facility is really designed for. It's a place to develop solutions for the Army. In addition, it serves a secondary role as an Army training center. So
these buildings behind us, they're life-size, they're realistic, but they're fake in a sense, but they're meant for training.
Exactly, exactly. I recall, the Army's always looked at the need to have a diverse places to train, and in the past I recall we had training areas that were simple concrete buildings, but they didn't really provide the texture that you need to get that realistic training that our soldiers need today. So as you can see, the buildings behind us have glass and windows and doors and desks and plants, all those kind of things that our soldiers will encounter.
A lot of type of different buildings too on the campus. Give us a feel of what we'll find. I know that we're viewing an embassy behind us and some apartment buildings, but you have some other structures here as well.
Roger. What we do see, Pedro, is the place is really designed to be able to change, to adapt to whatever environment our soldiers might be in. So there's a 6-story building out there that may be an embassy one day, it may be a hotel another day, it may be a warehouse another day. So we can change the settings to meet the kind of environments that our soldiers are going to face. And what we're trying to do is provide a place that can serve as a variety of training areas so that we can get the most utility for it.
During the course of the hour, you're going to see video of soldiers that have been here at Fort A.P. Hill at the Asymmetric Warfare Training Center running scenarios in these various type of buildings, and you'll see a lot of different type of examples, which we'll get the Colonel to talk about as well. But we're going to talk about more about the purpose of the center, the mission of the group, and if you want to have questions about this type of training that goes on, about this center, about how it's used worldwide, here's your chance to do so with Colonel John Petkosek of the U.S. Army Asymmetric Warfare Group. Here's how you can call and ask him questions. For those of you in the Eastern and Central time zones, 202-748-8000. For those of you in the Mountain Pacific time zones, 202-748-8001. And for active military, if you want to give your thoughts on this as well, especially if you've had experience in these kind of war zones or areas of the world, 202-748-8002. Colonel, tell us a little bit about the places where, once they're trained here, where do these soldiers go? What kind of involvement are they in worldwide?
Well, soldiers today are employed all over the world. When you look at what the U.S. Army is doing and the U.S. military, we do different things. The recent Ebola breakout in Africa, there were U.S. Army soldiers that are helping. The earthquake in Nepal, there's always opportunities there to help around the world. So really it could be anywhere around the world. So the facility is designed for us to be able to replicate the kind of environments that we may face around the world. When you talked about the subterranean portion of it, that's a big thing now. We have to look at, if somebody has to go in to conduct a rescue in a subterranean environment, the first time they should do it is not when they're trying to save someone's life down there. They can go through it here and realize these are the techniques that I need, or this is the type of equipment that I need to accomplish those missions. So really, it supports soldiers deployed all around the world, and that's what it's built for. And I think it's tailorable so that we really can replicate any environment.
So give some examples of recent training that has gone on here and some areas of the world where these troops have been involved. Give us some concrete examples.
Well, I think one of the best ones that you you talked about was the tunnels or the subterranean piece. And what we realized earlier on is you see the environment around the world, sometimes you see some continuity there. When we originally designed this facility, we were heavily engaged in Afghanistan, and at the time, the soldiers faced these karezes, which are these water drain systems, and they had to understand how to go down into those, how to fight in those things. So it started off in that way. But when you look at the subterranean threat, and you look at other places around the world where that can apply, is you look at bunkers where chemical weapons might be stored in a country that you've got to recover, like in Syria, where they took them out and destroyed them. Somebody's got to be able to go in there and do that. So the subterranean threat is one that you might see anywhere around the world. And those are just two locations that you might see that.
In fact, we have video of folks, 1,500 feet of tunnel, if I understand it. You can't see it, but we have video of it, of soldiers in training. And again, that's part of the training that goes here at the Asymmetric Warfare Training Center. Again, we're here to take your calls and talk to Colonel John Petkosek, the commander of the Asymmetric Warfare Group. First call for you, Commander, is from Herbie in Moss Point, Mississippi. Herbie, you're on with the commander. Go ahead.
Good morning, C-SPAN. Yes, these buildings look like the United States building because, the way the police are throwing black people in the inner cities and the uprising that we're having here in America, it looks like we're getting to fight against our own people here. And it looks like y'all are training to more or less invade the inner city, or, it's mighty strange because everybody's training to do something overseas, and it doesn't look like overseas training. It looks like this is right here in America, and it's kind of scary because of the situation where we can't get police locked up for what they're doing to civilians and the stuff that's going on here in America. So it's it's kind of damaging. Y'all are doing something secretly here, I think.
Herbie, that's not really true. What we're doing is training U.S. soldiers to be able to operate in any contingency around the world. When you look at what U.S. Army soldiers do, they have to be able to operate along a contingency from disaster relief to high-end military conflict, and that's what the center is really designed for. It's to be able to replicate any environment that we might have to fight in. I mean, as we said earlier on, we are in Virginia, and that's where we live. I mean, we're U.S. soldiers. We're stationed in the United States, and so the center is located here, so it's convenient and easy to train on. But really, what you said is farthest from the truth. It's really, we want to be able to replicate any environment where our soldiers might be able to fight. As I'd said earlier, that we used to train in very rudimentary training facilities where it was these simple concrete buildings, and our soldiers really weren't prepared as well as they could have been by just adding a little bit of texture to make it as realistic as possible. Ultimately, this facility is designed to increase soldier survivability and save lives in combat, and that's what it's for. And I think that if we put it in that context, that's really what the U.S. Army is doing at this facility.
202-748-8000 for those of you in the Eastern and Central time zones. For the Mountain and Pacific, 202-748-8001, and for active military, 202-748-8002. Our guest, Colonel John Petkosek of the U.S. Army Asymmetric Warfare Group. John, Breezewood, Pennsylvania, you're up next. Go ahead.
Hi. I'm concerned like the last caller. I saw videos of your facility on the internet. I saw videos of individuals in John Deere caps saying, "Please don't take my guns," and other military training exercises that have been videotaped and have been put on the internet. Now, what safety or what do we have to guarantee us that these training facilities aren't being used to confiscate our guns in case of another economic meltdown like we had in 2008, like the gun confiscation that went on in Katrina? The U.S. troops from Afghanistan walked the streets of New Orleans and confiscated every gun that was there. What do we have to guarantee that we will be protected from that not happening in mass like it did in Katrina? Thousands of guns were confiscated by regular Army and by National Guard units.
Well, I can't speak about what happened in Katrina, but what I can say is, I know that everything on the internet is not necessarily true as we see it. And really, when you come back to what the facility is designed for and what we do here, we share it very openly. There's no secrets to be had. When you talk about what protects us, well, you know, the United States Constitution is what protects us, and that's what the U.S. Army is here for, to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And I would hope that all of our our listeners and viewers out there would appreciate what our soldiers are doing for us on a day-to-day basis. It's really the opposite of what the caller had articulated. It's really to protect the United States.
If the idea is to come up with solutions to situations across the world, how are those solutions developed? Who comes up with the strategies? How does it end up as a working model here at the center?
Well, you know, when you talk about the subterranean piece, Pedro, I think that's really a great example. When we realized that we had difficulty, whether it was operating in the Karezes of Afghanistan or in bunkers, or how are you going to get into these places, what we're able to do as an organization is let's look at some of the historical examples. In the past, the last time the U.S. Army really faced a threat like this was in the tunnels in Vietnam. So we had a chance to kind of look at how did our soldiers fight there? How did they fight in Okinawa? What did we learn from those things? And then we're able to use this facility to really replicate those type of conditions. So we use the facility to build underground bunkers and realize, hey, if there's a metal door, how are we going to breach that door? Once we breach that door, how are we going to get in there? What if we have to evacuate casualties from those areas? So we develop both material and non-material solutions. So we may learn that it's the particular way you carry your kit, or we may realize that you need a different type of kit to operate in that environment. How are you going to breathe in that environment? What if there's a fire and smoke in that environment? How are you going to operate? And what are the techniques? So really that's one of the great things that we do here, Pedro. And I guess once we do that, what's really special about this particular organization, what we do for the Army, is we've got the ability to take what we've learned and institutionalize it. That's really what it's about, is how quickly can the Army learn. When we talk about what's special about the United States Army, it's not about the tanks or the ships or the things that we have. It's about the people and our ability to adapt rapidly, and more rapidly than our adversary, is really what's special here. So I think this is really a location where we can adapt quickly, and you can see change happen right here at Fort A.P. Hill.
So before we go too far in, this topic of asymmetric warfare, define what it is in English. It generally describes a change in nature as far as those who would use this type of warfare in conflict zones or other places in the world. How do you define it?
Well, when I think about asymmetric warfare, what I think about is that there are two dissimilar forces, either the way they approach a fight or the equipment they have, and you don't attack your enemy's strength, you attack his weakness, and you have to protect your own. I think the best way for me to articulate is when you think about the way World War I was fought. That was a symmetric conflict. It was all about who had the most guns and how many soldiers could get on the ground. But the armies were essentially the same, and it was just who could get there the fastest with the most. And you had two very similar forces clashing with each other. But at a point during that war, somebody came up with the idea of, hey, what if we put a machine gun under the cover of armor and we called it a tank? That is an asymmetric approach to try to overcome your adversary by attacking his weaker point, and that would be able to attack with a tank. So that's how warfare has evolved. As if you're going to succeed in conflict, you don't want to attack your enemy's strengths, you want to attack his weakness. And you really, when you go into a conflict like that and you want soldiers to survive and come home, you want to make sure it's not a fair fight and that U.S. soldiers are equipped as best they can and best prepared for that type of conflict.
For the nature of the city that we're seeing behind us, are urban centers then the new battleground?
Well, when you look at what's happening in the world today, there's a huge population growth. A lot of times we look at the growth of these megacities all over the world where there's millions and millions of people in very close quarters. And if conflict is going to occur in regions like that, we want our soldiers to be able to understand the techniques that they've got to be able to apply in those environments. You want to do it here at Fort A.P. Hill, do it here in Virginia. The first time, we call on our soldier to have to figure out how are you going to get to the top of that 5-story building with no elevator, no ropes, is here at Fort A.P. Hill as opposed to some far off land.
Lenny from Prescott, Arizona, you are next for our guest. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning, Colonel. I wanted to alert our citizens and to get an explanation, if we could, for an exciting military training called Jade Helm 15, which is all over the internet. I guess it involves 10 states, and there's going to be civilians participating in towns like Big Spring, Texas. Could you explain the magnitude of that and what the purpose of that is? And apparently you're going to have crisis actors, and there are going to be soldiers dressed in uniform and not in uniform, and apparently it's very exciting. Could you explain that to us? Thank you very much.
Unfortunately, it's not something that I'm familiar with, so I can't really explain that. But I do know that those type of things are things that we do here, where we get our soldiers the opportunity to work within an environment where there are civilians and soldiers. As a matter of fact, one of the things I could talk about is that, unfortunately, I just don't know about that particular exercise. But when you talk about soldiers operating within an environment where there's civilians, one of the things we're looking at here at Fort A.P. Hill is a program of using autonomous robots. Essentially what we do is we've taken a number of robots that can operate independently, walk up and down these streets. We can dress some up in uniforms, we can dress some up in civilians clothes, and we can use that as a chance here at A.P. Hill to train our soldiers how to discriminate between friendly forces, forces that may be evacuated, and that's just one of those great things that we're able to do at A.P. Hill. Again, I'm sorry, I'm just not familiar with that exercise.
Tim, Palm Harbor, Florida, you're next. Go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. I just wanted to differentiate the people who formulate our policy and the people who implement it. There's a big difference being the politicians versus the patriotic individuals like your colonel there. But I'm just wondering, now we're going international urban warfare. Who sets the goals here that, or why are we going around the world now and apparently getting involved in international urban warfare? We're meddling in every country all over the world. We're hated everywhere. And we get these things called blowback. We have people coming in here and doing things like they do in Texas. I know that was provoked, but there's only going to be more of that. When are we going to mind their own business? I thought we were broke, and all we have is this ongoing militarism of the country. And a lot of people, I think I speak for, we support the people in the military. We don't support the people formulating these wacko policies, like overthrowing a government in Ukraine and putting in people who are not elected, all because there's a trouble with Russia, because Russia is creating a basket of currencies, because Russia has bases in the Crimea, and they can interfere with the U.S. starting more problems in the Middle East. So can you respond to that? Thank you.
Well, you bring up a good point in that the world has changed quite a bit in just a short time that I've been in the military. When I first came in the Army, what really drove our military strategy was something called air-land battle, where we had to be able to fight outnumbered and win against an enemy. That's what, when I first came in as I was a lieutenant and the Cold War was still going on, that was the world we faced. And that was just really it was a math problem. It was, we've got to have better tanks and better aircraft, and we've got to be able to fight a force that we know in a very symmetric way. Well, the world has changed, and the Army has changed with it. The Army's really changed their operating concept to say, what do we want our soldiers to be able to do now? And that's fight in a complex world where asymmetric threats are out there. This facility that you see here today is meant to replicate that, so we can really prepare our soldiers to do things where we might not know they're going to have to operate in the future. So again, I really think that the facility itself here is designed to serve our Army and help our soldiers face those challenges that they're going to face in the future, because we really don't know what that's going to be. It's a very complicated world out there, and things have changed, and we really want our soldiers to be those agile and adaptive leaders and soldiers, so that we can, accomplish what our nation asks us to do.
The Fort A.P. Hill military base in Virginia is where you'll find the Asymmetric Warfare Training Center, 300 acres, part of it specifically devoted to these buildings that we've been showing you this morning. Also tunnels underneath and various type of structures on the campus. We'll go next to Justin, Petaluma, California. Thanks for calling. Go ahead.
Thank you very much for taking my call. I got to reflect what a lot of the callers have said today. And as I'm watching the program now, this is just very scary stuff. This looks almost like Western or American cities rather than being prepared for what we're going to face out in other countries. And, the colonel has said we've got to be prepared for this and all of that. This is almost every caller, and the people that are listening right now, I think, understand that this is a very scary and new thing that the military looks like it's going to be taking on that could be against its very own people, American people. Everything I've seen except for this one mosque has been in English. It says Main Street. Main Street.
Okay, we'll let our guest respond, caller.
What I'd say is it is a very complicated world out there, and you shouldn't find it scary or frightening. You should find it reassuring that that we're training our soldiers to be able to operate across a broad spectrum of facilities. You know, when I had said is I've been in the Army a little bit of time, and when I first come in, we spent all our time walking through the woods, learning how to fight in the wood line, how to navigate with a map and compass in areas like that, and then come to realize when we were called by our nation to perform a mission, we were operating in an urban center, and how we did that, whether it was us helping soldiers or our soldiers operating in the current or the conflicts that we most recently operated in, all of those were in an urban environment where we had to learn how to operate in and among where people are, because really the U.S. military, as we operate across the world, there are enemy forces, and they mix themselves in with friendly forces all the time. And as you know, the robot example that I gave up, we need to be able to have our soldiers discriminate between what's friendly and what's enemy. You know, when I was growing up in the Army, one of the things they always used to say about our soldiers is, hey, you know a soldier is really doing the right thing when they do the right thing when nobody's watching them. And that was really how you said, hey, our soldiers are really disciplined and doing the right thing. Well, as the world has changed, now what we have to be able to ask our soldiers to do is do the right thing when the whole world is watching. Because as you said, there are a lot of things out there, and they're on the internet, and whatever we do is going to be out there in broadcast. We don't have any secrets to hide, when really this is a great opportunity for us to showcase what our soldiers are doing for the American people.
To the caller's point, you do have a replica church and a replica mosque on campus. Why the importance of these structures?
Well, you know, when I look at the church, I do have to reflect. It could be a church today, it could be a town hall tomorrow, it could be a store the next day. And what's really important about the environment is as we replicate is we want our soldiers to be sensitive to the fact that that all these things are going to be encountered when they're out operating around the world. And we all know the media reports of soldiers causing harm to our cause by being insensitive to those things. So by having those located here, we can sensitize our soldiers to the fact that, hey, you're going to be operating around sites that are very sensitive. Those are the kind of things that people will be very emotional about, and we want to make them comfortable operating in an environment here in Virginia before they go forward. You know, when you talk about that comfort level, you know, an earlier commander of the group used to say you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. But what we expect our soldiers to do today is in this chaotic world we live in, we've got to be able to not only be comfortable in these chaotic situations, we're expecting our soldiers to thrive in that kind of environment, because that's the world we live in. And that's what we're trying to do here at Fort A.P. Hill, is provide them an environment with all these different cues that are going to cause them to think, because that's really what we want our soldiers to do. Our motto as an organization, as the Asymmetric Warfare Group, is think, adapt, anticipate. That's what we want our soldiers to do here in Virginia before we call them and put them in harm's way.
You're speaking, or you're